This was the moment the Roman Empire finally broke. One battle, one man, one nightmare named Attila the Hun. Across the endless plains of Pannonia, the drums of the Huns thundered like approaching storms. Attila rode at their head, lean, sharp-eyed, his gaze fixed westward. Behind him followed an army of nations. Goths, Alans, Gepids, Ostrogoths, wild tribes bound by fear and gold. "The Romans grow weak," Attila said to his chieftains. "Their gods sleep, their emperor hides behind walls. We shall wake them with fire." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with something older than ambition, a belief that the world itself must bend to his will. In Gaul, word of the invasion spread like wildfire. Entire towns fled before the Hunnic horde. Churches emptied, fields burned. From Trier to Orleans, the Roman West trembled. But one man refused to yield, Flavius Aetius, the last great general of Rome. He had once lived among the Huns as a hostage, had learned their ways, and feared them like no other. Yet he also understood Attila, his pride, his hunger for glory. In the marble halls of Ravenna, Aetius spoke to the emperor. "If we do not stop him in Gaul, there will be no Rome left to defend." So began the desperate alliance, Romans, Visigoths under their proud king Theodoric, and the broken remnants of once mighty tribes. Aetius forged them together not with faith, but necessity. As the Huns swept across the rivers and fields, Attila's scouts returned with news. "The Roman is coming, and he brings the Goths." Attila smiled. "Good," he said softly. "Let the old world gather its bones. I shall bury them myself." The plains of Catalonia awaited, a land soon to be soaked in legend and blood. The sky over Gaul was black with smoke. Villages vanished in days, their ashes scattered by Hunnic hooves. Attila's horsemen rode like a living storm, silent until they struck, leaving only charred wood and screams behind. He led from the front, his bow always ready, his face untouched by fear. To his men, he was not just a king, he was fate itself. "Rome calls itself eternal," he told his warriors, riding past burning fields. "Let us see how long eternity lasts when fire rides against it." Behind him, hundreds of thousands marched. Huns in leather armor, Gothic mercenaries, savage tribes drawn by plunder and prophecy. Priests of the steppes rode among them, singing to the spirits of war. The ground shook beneath their charge. Even the rivers seemed to run from their path. In their way stood Orleans, a Roman stronghold, defended by faith and desperation. Bishop Aenianus rang the bells as the horizon darkened with horsemen. "Lord," he prayed, "deliver us from the scourge." For days the city held out, walls crumbling under the Huns' rams. Then Attila ordered the fires lit. Flames leapt high as his men roared in triumph, until, from the west, came the sound of horns. Aetius had arrived. The Roman banners, crimson and gold, appeared on the hills alongside the Visigoths. King Theodoric rode beside Aetius, his voice fierce. "This day, the sons of Rome and the sons of the Goths stand as one, or fall together." Attila turned to his lieutenants, his expression unreadable. "So," he murmured, "the Roman comes to die where his empire ends." He ordered his horde to pull back toward the plains near Chalons, open ground where cavalry ruled. There, the fate of empires would be decided. As the fires of Orleans faded behind them, the Huns rode east beneath a blood-red sky. The final reckoning was coming, and Attila meant to carve his name into the bones of history. The Roman army was a ghost of its former self, fractured, underpaid, more a memory than a machine. Yet Flavius Aetius, the man they called the last of the Romans, refused to let the empire die without a fight. On the plains near the river Seine, his camp burned with torchlight. Around the fire stood kings who had once been enemies. Theodoric, proud and massive, his beard streaked with silver. Thorismund, his reckless son. And Sangiban, chieftain of the Alans, a man whose loyalty shifted like the wind. Aetius looked at them all. "Attila has gathered every tribe between the Danube and the sea," he said. "He brings the end of the world with him, but together we can make him bleed." Theodoric slammed his sword into the earth. "Then we fight not as Romans or Goths," he growled, "but as men who still want to live." Their alliance was uneasy, fragile as glass. The Goths hated the Romans. The Alans trusted no one. But Aetius knew war better than politics, and he knew Attila. The two had once shared a tent, hunted together on the steppes. "He is not a man," Aetius told Theodoric quietly later that night. "He is a storm. You don't defeat a storm, you survive it." Meanwhile, far to the east, Attila prepared his own army with grim precision. His camp was a sea of hides and fires, stretching for miles. Shamans painted symbols of power on warriors' faces. Drums beat like thunder. The Huns believed the spirits of their ancestors rode with them, that death itself favored their charge. In the center of the camp, Attila stood before his standard, a sword said to have fallen from the heavens. He raised it to the night sky and shouted, "Tomorrow, the gods will watch Rome die." The army roared back, tens of thousands of voices shaking the air. When dawn broke, the two hosts began their march toward the Catalaunian Plains, where wheat once grew and now only bones would. Between Aetius and Attila, between the old world and the new, history was holding its breath. The Catalaunian Plains stretched endlessly beneath the burning summer sun, rolling fields of dust and dry grass, soon to be the graveyard of nations. To the east, the Huns spread across the horizon like a living tide. To the west, the banners of Rome and her barbarian allies rippled in the wind. Between them, silence, the kind that only comes before catastrophe. Aetius studied the ground from a low hill. His weathered eyes traced every ridge, every shadow. "He will strike from the center," he murmured to Theodoric beside him. "He always does. Crush the heart. Let the limbs die on their own." Theodoric grinned through his gray beard. "Then we guard the heart with our lives." They formed the battle line. Romans and Franks on the left, Alans in the middle, Visigoths on the right. A desperate mosaic of languages, banners, and faiths. Aetius rode along the ranks, his armor dull and battered, his voice steady. "Hold your ground. If we fall here, there will be no more Rome, no more gods, no more tomorrow." Across the plain, Attila watched from atop his black horse. His horde spread behind him in perfect formation, disciplined chaos, each tribe knowing its place. He raised his sword, the sword of Mars as his men called it, and the drums began to thunder. "Let the world burn," Attila roared. The ground trembled as tens of thousands of hooves thundered forward. The Hunnic charge came like a storm. Arrows darkened the sky, striking shields, faces, throats. Men screamed, horses fell, and the Roman front buckled under the first wave. The Alans wavered, their line breaking. Aetius shouted for reinforcements, spurring his horse through chaos, his sword flashing. He saw Theodoric's cavalry sweep down like a hammer, slamming into the Huns' flank. A roar rose from the Gothic ranks, shaking the plains. Arrows tore through both sides. Smoke and dust swallowed the sun. The clash became madness. Spears snapping, steel screaming, men dying without knowing whose blood soaked them. At the center, Attila pushed forward, surrounded by his elite. His eyes blazed as he shouted to his warriors, "Drive them into the dirt! Rome ends today." But Rome did not fall, not yet. For every Hun who struck, a Roman or a Goth struck back. The Catalaunian Plains had become what both men feared and desired, a place where gods and mortals would settle the fate of the world. The sun bled red over the Catalaunian Plains as the battle raged into the evening. The air was thick with dust, smoke, and the metallic stench of blood. Arrows hissed like serpents. The clash of steel drowned out prayer and reason alike. Aetius fought in the midst of the chaos, shouting orders no one could hear. His horse was cut down beneath him. He rose, swinging his blade, eyes wild. To his left, the Alans were collapsing, Sangiban's men turning, retreating under the weight of the Hunnic assault. Attila pressed hard, sensing weakness. His cavalry surged forward like a black wave. From the Gothic flank came thunder, Theodoric's riders charging in formation. their long hair whipping in the wind. He rode at their front, a gray lion roaring defiance. For Gaul, for freedom, strike! They smashed into the Hunnic flank, sending bodies and horses flying. The plain trembled. Theodoric's sword flashed, cutting down a standard-bearer. Then, in a moment that would echo through legend, fate turned. A spear, no one knew from whose hand, struck him beneath the ribs. Theodoric fell from his horse, crushed beneath the hooves of his own riders. They did not see him fall. They were blind with fury, but soon the cry spread through the ranks. Theodoric is dead. The Visigothic line wavered. For a heartbeat, it seemed all was lost. Then Thorismund, his son, took the field. His armor was soaked in blood, his face streaked with tears and rage. He seized the fallen banner, raising it high. "My father rides with us still," he bellowed. "Kill the Scourge of God." The Goths surged forward once more, roaring like beasts. The Alans steadied, and the Romans reformed their lines. The counterattack slammed into the Huns, forcing Attila to pull back toward his camp. For the first time, the great conqueror hesitated. Night fell, and the plains were a wasteland of corpses, Goth, Hun, Roman alike. The dead lay so thick the living could not take a step without treading on bone and flesh. Aetius stood amid the carnage, breathing hard. "So this," he whispered, "is what saving Rome looks like." But the night was not yet finished, and neither was Attila. Darkness swallowed the plains. Torches flickered between mountains of corpses, casting long shadows over what had once been wheat fields. The screams of the wounded echoed through the night, men calling for mothers, for gods, for mercy. None came. At the heart of the field stood Attila's camp, encircled by wagons in a great ring, the lager, his fortress of death. Within it, the Huns waited in silence, their eyes reflecting the fires of the dead. Attila himself sat upon a black-furred throne, his sword across his knees. His armor was dented, his lip bleeding, but his gaze was cold as iron. He had lost thousands. The Visigothic cavalry had broken his advance. The Romans still held the high ground. For the first time in years, the Scourge of God was trapped. His lieutenants argued. Some begged to attack before dawn, others urged retreat. Attila silenced them with a glance. "No," he said, voice low, deadly calm. "We fight no ghosts in the dark. The Romans believe they have won. Let them come to me. Let them choke on their victory." Outside the camp, Aetius surveyed the field with Thorismund. The old general's face was carved in exhaustion. "He's cornered," Thorismund said. "Let's finish it." Aetius shook his head. "A wounded wolf is most dangerous when caged. Attack his lager, and you'll lose half your army. Rome cannot afford another victory like today." Thorismund glared at him. "My father lies dead out there. I will not let Attila live." Aetius gripped his shoulder. "Then you'll die beside him, and Rome with you. Go back to Toulouse. Claim your throne. Let the world believe you broke the Scourge of God." For hours, Attila waited. The night was filled with the crackle of distant fires. He ordered a great pyre built in the center of the camp, his own funeral blaze. "If they come," he told his men, "we burn. I will not live to be chained before Rome." But dawn came and no attack. Aetius had withdrawn, his army battered but victorious. When Attila rose from his throne and looked across the empty field, he understood. Rome had not destroyed him, but it had survived him. And survival for an empire on its knees was victory enough. When the sun rose over the Catalaunian Plains, the mist carried the stench of death for miles. Ravens covered the sky like a living storm, tearing at what the battle had left behind. The soil itself seemed to bleed. Attila rode through the aftermath, silent, his horse stepping carefully among the corpses. Around him, his warriors gathered the wounded and the dying. The proud horde that had once thundered across Europe now moved like ghosts, broken, hollow-eyed, still dangerous. One of his chieftains rode up beside him. "The Roman didn't chase us, my lord. He could have crushed us, but he turned away." Attila's jaw tightened. "Because he's clever. He knows a dying wolf will still bite. He looked toward the west, where smoke from Aetius' camp still hung in the air. He spared me not from mercy, but fear. He knows I will rise again. That night, the Huns buried their dead in silence. Fires burned low. The sound of weeping drifted through the wind, strange, almost human. Attila sat alone before the sword of Mars, thrust into the ground before him, its blade blackened with dried blood. He whispered to it as if to a god, "You promised me the world. You gave me half." Far away, Aetius returned to the Roman lines, greeted not as a hero, but as a reminder of how weak the empire had become. His soldiers cheered, but behind their eyes was exhaustion, despair. Rome had survived, yes, but only barely. In his tent, Aetius wrote a single line to the emperor. "Attila has been repelled, but the price of victory is Rome itself." Outside, the Visigoths marched home, carrying the body of Theodoric. His son, Thorismund, rode in silence beside the coffin. "We won," he said to no one, "but it feels like losing." And so both sides, Hun and Roman, barbarian and imperial, left the plains behind them. Neither had triumphed. The battle had changed nothing and everything. Attila had not conquered Rome. Rome had not destroyed Attila. But both had seen the truth. The old world was dying, and no sword could save it. The shadow of Rome stretched long that day, and Attila rode within it. Winter came, cold and merciless. Snow swept across the steppes like a white fire, covering the graves of Gaul. But Attila lived, and where he lived, fear followed. He returned to his capital on the Hungarian plains, where tens of thousands still waited to kneel before him. His tents, gilded and black, stood against the horizon like a city of shadows. The bards sang of his survival, calling it divine proof that no Roman sword could slay the chosen of God. Yet Attila's triumph was hollow. He ate little, spoke less. At night he would wake suddenly, gripping his blade, as if still surrounded by battle. His advisors urged new campaigns, against Rome itself, against the weak emperor cowering in Ravenna. One evening, he gathered his chiefs around a fire. "The Romans think they have beaten me," he said, his voice low and calm. "They have only delayed judgment. Next spring we march for Italy. Not for gold, not for land, for vengeance." The camp erupted in cries of joy and fury. But inside Attila's eyes burned something darker. Not hunger, but obsession. He no longer sought conquest. He sought meaning. In Ravenna, word reached Aetius like thunder. The Senate panicked. "He is coming again," they said. "The scourge returns." The emperor trembled, priests called for fasting, and Aetius prepared for the impossible. Another war Rome could not afford. When the snows melted, Attila crossed the Alps like a storm of iron. Cities fell before him. Aquileia burned so fiercely that its smoke blackened the sky for days. Towns emptied before his arrival. Even the wolves fled his path. But when he reached the river Po, something changed. The road to Rome lay open, undefended. His men urged him forward, crying for the eternal city's fall. Then, a lone delegation approached his camp. At its head, an old man in white robes, Pope Leo I, carrying only a cross. No swords, no legions, just faith. As Leo stood before the Scourge of God, even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Attila dismounted, approached him, and, to the shock of his warriors, bowed his head. No one knows what passed between them that day. But when the meeting ended, Attila turned his army around and left Italy. The wolf had spared the lamb, and the world would forever wonder why. The Huns rode north in silence. The Italian plains smoldered behind them. Ruined cities, broken walls, scattered bones. Yet something had changed. Attila no longer spoke of glory or vengeance. He rode apart from his men, as if haunted by a voice only he could hear. His lieutenants whispered in confusion. Why did he turn back? Some asked. Was he struck by the Roman god's spell? Others swore that when Pope Leo spoke, they saw a figure in the sky, a warrior in shining armor, sword drawn, standing behind the pontiff. Attila said nothing. He had seen enough gods to know they didn't save men. They used them. When they reached the plains of the Danube, the horde disbanded. Tribes drifted back east, taking their loot and their dead. The empire of the Huns, built on speed, fear, and fire, began to crumble. But the king still dreamed of conquest. In the spring of 453, he announced his marriage to Ildiko, a young Gothic princess, his final prize, and perhaps his last attempt to feel alive again. The wedding was a spectacle. Drums thundered through the night, mead flowed like rivers, and warriors sang of past glories. Attila laughed for the first time in months. He drank deeply, his face flushed with life and wine. Then, as the feast raged on, he disappeared into his tent with his new bride. By dawn, he was dead. His guards found him lying on his back, blood flowing from his nose and mouth. There were no wounds, no struggle. Some said his nose had burst in his sleep, a cruel joke of the gods, a warrior drowned by his own strength. Others whispered that Ildiko had stabbed him as he slept, avenging the ruin of her people. When the news spread, the camp fell into chaos. Warriors tore their hair, slashed their cheeks, and cursed the sky. The Scourge of God, the man who had made empires tremble, was gone, not by battle, but by breath. His body was sealed in 3 coffins: gold, silver, and iron. The slaves who buried him were slaughtered to hide his grave. No one ever found it. The storm that had once threatened Rome had passed, leaving only silence where thunder had lived. They buried Attila beneath the midnight sky, far from the reach of kings, priests, and historians. His people said the heavens wept that night, that thunder rolled over the plains as the Scourge of God returned to the earth. None would ever know where his bones lay, only that the ground itself seemed to remember his rage. For a time, the Huns still rode. The tribes turned on one another. The allies who had once shaken Europe now tore themselves apart. Within a few years, the empire of the steppes was gone, scattered like smoke. In the west, Aetius, the man who had stopped Attila, found no peace either. Rome no longer needed heroes. Jealous courtiers whispered in the emperor's ear, calling Aetius too powerful, too loved. One autumn day, in the marble halls of Ravenna, Emperor Valentinian drew his dagger and stabbed him to death with his own hands. The last Roman general fell without a sword in his hand. Proof that the empire Attila had failed to destroy would soon destroy itself. And so, 2 titans died the same way, not in war but in betrayal and silence. In the decades that followed, the Visigoths, Vandals, and Franks carved the empire into kingdoms. The Roman eagle fell from its pillars. The Latin tongue grew quiet. Across Europe, children still whispered Attila's name as a curse and a legend. They said he would rise again when empires grew soft and kings forgot fear, that the thunder in distant storms was the sound of his hooves. But history knew the truth. The Battle of the Catalaunian Plains had not decided who would rule the world. It had marked the moment when the world itself began to change. Rome was dying. The Dark Ages were coming. And somewhere beneath the earth, Attila slept, the last true king of chaos, waiting for the world to forget peace once more.